Hi, everyone. It's good to be here. I'm very proud to be the convener of this afternoon. And also, as all of you, a bit worried about our master, our leader, who is not here. And we are here together with the high spirits, thinking that everything is going to be well. And Ivan is going to be shortly with us. But he apologized because he's very gentle. Even being sick, he apologized that he's not here with Vania Mesquita, who is a very good friend. We've known each other for more than 20 years. And Vania is a sociologist. She is an associate professor in the State University of Rio de Janeiro. Rio de Janeiro has many different universities. Some are federal, some are state universities. And this particular university where Vania works is in the countryside. And its project was meant to be to deliver a different kind of education, higher education. So it was much more, how can I say, holistic in its approach. It was very inspired by ideas from people, Brazilians you might know, like Paulo Freire. And up to now, it's a very progressive university. And the kind of work that Vania is going to deliver to you today is deeply related to the fact that she works together with students who are from this region. And she has been doing research in what we call favelas and also urban settlements that are similar to where here in South Africa you have RDP housing. And obviously, it's not for everyone. It is related to forced removals due to gentrification and also to a large scale sugarcane plantations in the region. So it's a very dense and very complex local reality that speaks a lot about what's happening in Brazil at large. And she has consistently done research on issues like religion, but not just religion, but a particular phenomena that's happening in Brazil, the rise of Pentecostalism, and its relation to the rise also of very violent measures taken by the state against the proliferation of drug cartels. Drug cartels that obviously are not headed by people who live in favelas and in urban settlements, by the elite, but it's exactly the local people who suffer most from this unequal society, this imbalance in our society. And she has therefore done research on consumption, on entrepreneurship, on sociability, all traversed by violence and daily struggles to move on, to have the right to carry on your faith despite all these constraints. She's going to share part of her most recent research with us. And I'm very, very glad to have Vania here. It's an honor for Huma, and we are looking forward to hear you. Vania wrote her presentation in English. She's going to read it, but she asked me to probably answer to your questions in Portuguese. So I'm going to try to do some translation with my English, which is also not very good, as you can see. So thank you, Vania.
Okay. Thank you so much, Antônia, for my introduction presentation. And special, thank you so much, Divine, and everyone at home for the outcome and the organization of this seminar. Thank you, Amina. I am very happy to hear you reaching with you. I also want to thank my Brazilian friends, Nadia, Andrea, Marcelo, Matheus, for the wonderful time I am spent in Cape Town. I am first time in Cape Town. And also everyone present. My presentation, sorry, Pentecostal expansion in urban periphery of Rio de Janeiro. Done again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's see.
Okay. This time, sorry. This year of Campus Goytacazes local, my research localized in north of the state of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Drug characters, territorial expansion, and religions conversations from of religion to Pentecostalism. The research in Nova York, ARDP, similar ARDP, Nova York Rose Complex, Campus dos Goytacazes, state of Rio de Janeiro, with 845 units housing. Okay. This is my map Rio de Janeiro. Okay. Local. This research examines the presence and practice of Pentecostal church in territories controlled by armed groups linked to drug trafficking in favelas and social housing complex in the north region of the state of Rio de Janeiro. This area are marked by the restriction of Afro-Brazilian religion, by institutional precarity, inequality, and by the growth of small Pentecostal churches that have become keynotes of sociability, faith, and the symbol and the order. Based on ethnography, fieldwork, and interview, this study investigates how Pentecostal churches establish themselves in this territory and what effects they produce in context where everyday life unfolds under fear, negotiation, and complex power arrangements. Okay. My question, what does it mean to inhabit a territory where fear is the holy and the sacred in under surveillance? The perspective is that Pentecostalism in this experience does not simply survive. It territorializes, become a form of social mediation that acts of symbolic, emotional, and political dimensions. In a broader sense, we argue that in the favela studies, life, anthropologist Viana Dias, consider unfolds in Campos dos Goytacazes in a continuous intertwining between visible and invisible force and the territory. In this science, Pentecostal religion, indistinct Pentecostal religiosity formulates a cosmopolitics de organize, protect, and transform every life. Thus, Pentecostalism not only morally regulates life on the whole of drug trafficking, but also constitutes a cosmopolitan with the Pentecostal supernatural in these expressions are angels, demons, prophets, is articulate with armed violence and redefines ways of living. Yeah, it's correct. It's okay. After more than a century in Brazil, Pentecostalism remains deeply rooted among poor and Black population in urban periphery. Most congregations are small, locally organized churches operating in garages, halls, and converted storefronts, which grants Pentecostalism a strong territorial embeddedness and social proximity. Its growth derives less from theological doctrine and more from its ability to translate the experience of spiritual and emotional language, offer social network support and legitimacy in context of marginality and insecurity. In the 1990s, there was a close symbolic association between drug faction and Afro-Brazilian religions. This phenomenon was researched by anthropologist Cristina Vital in favelas in the city of Rio de Janeiro. The figure such as São Jorge Ogum were central to the moral and the protective landscape of many favelas, Rio de Janeiro and Campo dos Goytacazes, for example. However, from the 200s, however, this configuration changed significantly. Christian symbols, gross, biblical verse, gospel, scripture began to dominate the religious imagery of this territory, marking a new alliance between drug faction and evangelical morality. This shift became particularly evident with the emergence of the TCP, Terceiro Comando Puro, a drug faction that gained control of several favelas and housing complex in Campo dos Goytacazes. In prevision researches, in collaboration with students, we observed that the rise of the TCP coincided with the decline of another faction, known as Comando Vermelho, which had formerly maintained symbolic deals with Umbanda practice. Under TCP, Terceiro Comando Puro, dominance Afro-Brazilian temples and symbols were systematically eliminated, and small Pentecostal churches quickly expanded. This replenishment of Afro-religions, signed by evangelical honors, crosses, verses, and prize songs, represents not only aesthetic change, but a reconfiguration of moral and territorial legitimacy. These dynamics, concludes Office Silvia Pereira and I, call a local cosmopolitics, correct. A spiritual grammar that connects power, fear, and belonging, where religion becomes an active element of territorial governance. In the housing complex study, many of them under TCP control. We identified a dense network of small Pentecostal churches and the near absence of Afro-Brazilian religion space. While Pentecostalism expands throughout visible and socially accepted practice, occupying homes, storefronts, and public areas. Afro-religious faiths are pushed into the private sphere, surviving only in secrecy and silence. This asymmetry shows a profound inequality in religion's visibility and legitimacy. Pentecostal churches become territorial, authorized, where Afro-Brazilian religions are confined to domestic resistance. A sociologist César Teixeira argues drug faction and Pentecostal churches act as moral frontiers, alternate between confront and coexistence. Belong to a religion here also means belong to a moral territory. The church is not only a spiritual community, but also a social map that orients behavior, locality, and movement. Pentecostal churches thus redefine the moral geographic of the periphery, working as zones of mediation, protection, and sometimes control in ambiguous and contradictory ways. The territory is at the same time physical and symbolic, form parts of a local cosmopolitan where the sacred, fear, and everyday survival intertwine. We argue that such authority is formulated because in that territory, the material and the supernatural and intertwined in a web of powers that guides behavior and reinforce hierarchies. In its complex pattern, the territory and the supernatural are articulated in a complex network in which the living are subjects of faith, social actor, and spiritual combatants. Thus, to understand religion, it is necessary to analyze not only its strategic dimensions, but also its eschatological and cosmopolitan dimension. Okay. 1 minute. Pentecostal church enjoys social legitimacy and territory recognition while Afro-Brazilian religion are marginalized. In conclusion, the expansion of Pentecostalism in Rio de Janeiro urban periferias, and in particular in areas dominated by Terceiro Comando Puro, cannot understood merely as religion phenomenon. It's a complex interplay of faith, power, and territory. These justices occupy not only physical space, but also imagination, emotions, and moral work, offer many refuge and legitimacy where the states operate under a role that combine practice that can be classified at some time as legal and illegal. Understand this dynamic recognize ambiguity, style of negotiation, and symbolic displacement. For in this territory, faith is not only belief, but also strategy, protection, and a shared language of survival. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vania.
Sorry for my little.
No.
Thanks.
One of the most beautiful things at Human is that people here, they speak many languages, and they understand that we master some languages. Some of us don't master any language, but that sharing our knowledge in a language that is not ours is always challenging. And we also understand here, I have learned it here, that we don't take for granted that if you don't speak the language, you don't think well, you are not creative or something like that. So we appreciate very much your work. Thank you so much. I open now to the floor. I want to, probably you have questions, curiosities. I just want to, I think we as Brazilians, we cannot be silent right now, because last week in Brazil, there was a massacre. And probably some of you have read about it. And the context where it happened, we can say, in a very loose way, that's similar to the place where Vania does her research. And the fact that the state police has shot in more than 120 men because they were considered without a trial criminals, reminds us of other massacres that are going on in the world, to which some of you are also personally related. But we should not just be personally related, but as human beings, we should all be concerned about what is going on. And here in South Africa, I don't want to mention what is going on now, but when I saw the first images that came from Brazil, it reminded me of Maricana first. So, you know, there are layers and layers of connections here, and how usually in Brazil, Black bodies are targets because they are considered less than human beings, sometimes just bodies, sometimes just flesh. So when Vania is bringing attention to the fact that there is a spirituality in this realm, and that's something very precious that we as social science should pay more attention. Linda, please.
I think I think my question is around why what led to I guess Afro-Brazilians being marginalized. Because I think one of the slides said there was a point in time when they were not marginalized, and now there's been a shift from one to the other. So, yeah, I think my question is what led to the shift.
Você quer responder direto ou você quer que eu recolha outras perguntas? Okay, she wants to hear to have more questions so that she can have some time to process. Fanny, please.
Language. So thank you so much for your consideration and your efforts. So I was wondering about the phrase spiritual grammar. I'm very curious about where it comes from, if it's also like a thing of translation. I'm just curious, so can you unpack it a little bit? And also, I have the same curiosity as Linda around the kind of symbolic displacement that happened with the Afro-Brazilian, if there was any with the Afro-Brazilian musicians, and why then that was replaced with the Pentecostal, like the kind of what's the word? The conjugation, also is not coming.
French. Try French.
Even in French, it's not coming. But anyway, you understand why the compatibility, compatibility, why what's happening there.
Você quer responder agora, Fanny? Você quer responder agora ou quer ouvir mais perguntas? Quer responder agora?
Oi? Pode sim.
Depois a gente passa para os outros, senão você fica...
Assim, obrigada, né, Linda, pela pergunta. Esta pergunta, ela indica para a complexidade que é olharmos para o Brasil, não apenas no momento do nosso contexto atual, né, mas também em relação a toda a nossa história. Talvez, enfim, não uma resposta, mas uma perspectiva é pensar as desigualdades no Brasil. Essas desigualdades não são apenas desigualdades, enfim, ou como pensar em desigualdade no Brasil envolve muitos marcadores sociais, né? Raça, né? No contexto contemporâneo, pensar a condição dessa população negra, periférica, encarcerada, não sei como você vai dizer, né? O sofrimento das mulheres que muitas vezes estão envolvidas na relação de cuidado com essa população. E estamos falando de como a Antonádia mencionou, de como pensar o Estado nesses contextos. Né? Não que o Estado esteja ausente, mas como ele se faz nas margens, né? Como a antropóloga Viana Dais também nos provoca, né, a pensar. Isso é, esse Estado ele se faz na margem, na relação de opressão a essa população, de violência, morte, né? E de relações de interesse também por parte do Estado, especialmente nos contextos eleitorais. Enfim, é muita questão, mas eu estou tentando apenas...
mas ela perguntou assim, por que mudou?
Por que mudou? Então, isso é dizer que não mudou.
Ok.
Por que não mudou?
Deixa eu...
Assim, eu disse para chegar e dizer que isso é algo que permanece ao longo do tempo, né? Mas o que muda em relação à prática da religião, isso que ela perguntou, né? Da religião, é que há também interesses, né? Da relação, como mencionei, também do Estado, e legitimar essas práticas violentas também, legitimar, enfim, ou não fazer nada que garanta, por exemplo, a liberdade religiosa nesses contextos. Então, o Estado não incide para garantir, nesses lugares, para garantir a proteção. É isso que a gente está falando. A gente está falando de uma dimensão em que essa população não é protegida, nem mesmo, ou principalmente naquilo que elas têm também como algo que orienta a vida delas, se pode orientar, que é a prática religiosa, né? Qual o sentido da vida para essas pessoas? Acho que é isso.
Okay. Okay.
Muito longa, né?
No, espera, senão não vou falar. Who has understood anything? No, Vania was, she was just answering Linda. She didn't, okay, but she was saying that Brazil has a very complex history, a colonial and a post-colonial history. And one of the main things to tackle with is inequality, and how inequality in Brazil is entangled with anti-Blackness and racism. So she was talking about this, we called peripheral regions, no? Like the favelas, the urban settlements. She was saying that in these places, adult men are very likely to be or to become inmates or to be incarcerated. And women stay back home, taking care of everything. And in this social landscape where the state is present just through the exercise of oppressive tactics and oppressive power, there is a kind of a logic of reaching safety amid a situation that's absolutely threatening and unequal. She quoted, for instance, the electoral period when people, some analysts blame people for getting engaged into populist negotiations. But what she was saying is that in the absence of any public service, whatever comes, you accept. No? And one of the things that came through the years was this offering of Pentecostalism as a way to disseminate among the people, the neighbors, intolerance. Mm-hmm. And so religious freedom is a constitutional right. But when the state doesn't support religious freedom, it disseminates among the neighbors this hate among themselves. So the state doesn't have to be there to wage a war. The war is already there and done by their own hands. So that's what she's calling this religious is not just about this beliefs, mm-hmm. no, but it's about this demise of the state. And of course, the deep relationship between the state and the drug dealers. So the profit interests the state. And the profit is sustained literally on the fact that people look at each other not as peers, not as neighbors, but as enemies. And religion is the point of dispute here. Para Fanny.
Relacionada também ao é importante entendermos que as religiões afro-brasileiras foram perseguidas ao longo né, da nossa história, parte inclusive do Estado, né? O não reconhecimento, né, dessas religiões como religiões legítimas. Falamos de alguma forma, de um racismo religioso. E que essas expressões se fazem presentes, não apenas nos termos, né, quando falamos racismo no Brasil, não apenas, enfim, em várias dimensões da vida social, inclusive das religiões. Então, houve perseguições, ataques, por parte, inclusive, de órgãos policiais ao longo da nossa história, né, nas últimas décadas, né, que antecedem a nossa Constituição. Tudo ali, né? Anos 30, 40, enfim. a apreensão e destruições de elementos religiosos, de terreiro. Então, uma prática que observa-se hoje, tivemos em outro tempo, praticadas também por órgãos estatais, polícias que entravam em determinados lugares, terreiros, e destruíam esses elementos rituais. Então, enfim.
E sobre a spiritual grammar, a gramática espiritual.
Sim. Essa gramática, ela é pautada em elementos, inclusive, de guerra, né? A chamada batalha espiritual. Então, é demonizar, né? Vários aspectos que constituem a religião afro-brasileira, né? E isso se dá quando há destruição do templo, né? Do órgão de devoção a São Jorge, por exemplo. Né? Então, passa-se aí a entender como algo que é demoníaco. E também o quanto que essa dimensão, né, esse sobrenatural, ele é o elemento que vai possibilitar essa experiência, a superação da condição da vida precária. Ok, não estamos falando apenas, não estamos falando de mudanças estruturais, né? Mas a dimensão, por exemplo, da prosperidade, da teologia da prosperidade. Né? E que tem uma marca muito individualista, né? No sentido de que a busca do indivíduo pela prosperidade, né? E não pela dimensão, né? Enfim, de reversão das suas condições sociais de forma coletiva.
So, yeah, Vânia is saying that Afro-Brazilian religions were always a target, because even if our constitution, that is from 1988, says that we are entitled to religious freedom, in previous decades, during the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, period of, we are all acquainted to this modernization process, no? These religious practices were considered backwards. And therefore, there were police raids, arsons, temples were destroyed. So, and obviously, it's related to a history of racism and anti-Blackness, because before our constitution, a century back, we still had slavery in Brazil. So, and that's what she's saying, that the Afro-religion in Brazil is much more communitarian and resistant, in opposition to not what people really practice, but to the ideology of the Pentecostalism, that especially prosperity ideology, which is much more individualistic, which means that when you have this individualist stance, you don't need to take any structural transformation. You don't need any. You don't challenge this structure. No, you move away. You move forward. You reach richness. You get out of poverty through your faith, individualistic faith. So that's the grammar. You know, there is like this. She said a spiritual battle going on. So, and of course, there are all those values, and not just values, but also the history, you know, and how Afro-Brazilian religions are a signpost to a certain sociality that goes against what the state promotes. I saw many hands, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, 5, okay.
Pode ser mais curtinho.
Thinking about in Africa and the way that it's grounded in the spirituality
African spirituality, Côte d'Ivoire, Benin. Think about Benin and I said, oh, how context matters because it's things really different what happened here. And in West Africa, I'm not really expert of study on, so I follow some people doing research on it. And I think one part of my question you already answered about narratives that give promise of survival but I'm really curious about comparing Pentecostalism in Africa, what's going on in Rio de Janeiro, and also how to confront with the renewal of routine now in African countries as Benin and Ghana, and we know Afro-descendants from Brazil who are even the US who are welcoming. Maybe it's elites who go through this and not people in parallel. So I'm really curious about how these things move and travel.
Ok. Você entende? Ela perguntou sobre a comparação com a África, também falou que os contextos importam e disse que tem um retorno de brasileiros de afro-religião que voltam para esses países como a Costa do Marfim e o Benin.
Do Brasil para cá.
Tá. Pois é.
It's a very interesting subject and discussion. As you're presenting, I was also thinking about different contexts. Looking at it, I was asking myself, is the Afro-Brazilian religion just like the indigenous African religion, or what has been termed traditional African religion? Is it that, or is it also based on the Bible base or something different? Is this similar to what we have as an indigenous African religion or traditional African religion that maybe the descendants from Africa took along with them? That was the first issue I was contemplating. Because when you look at it, even in the continent, there are different ways people look at the traditional African religion, especially from the perspective of Christianity and Islam. Because in most cases, it's looked down upon, even though they are not aggressively fighting against them, the convert from this same religion into Christianity now become an opponent to that religion. In most cases, they oppose it. In the case of Pentecostalism, you see Pentecostals fighting against the Orthodox churches, sometimes describing them as not spiritual enough. So it raises a lot of issues. But my major concern is how the drug laws were able to appropriate Pentecostalism. How do they justify their acts in the context of Pentecostalism? I think that is my major concern.
Entendeu? Como que os traficantes justificam o pentecostalismo dele, e aí ele diz que aqui no continente tem muitas diferenças. Por exemplo, todos que se convertem ao cristianismo ou ao Islã acabam se tornando oponentes, e mesmo dentro das religiões pentecostais tem os que dizem que tem guerras internas, não é espiritual bastante. Who else? Axel?
Thank you.
I cannot help but think about the cults around the Santa Muerte in Mexico. And here we can make a parallel between Catholicism and Pentecostalism, because Catholicism has, at least in Africa, an inculturation doctrine where they incorporate some parts of the local
religious beliefs. That's what's happening with the Santa Muerte in Mexico, where the narco-traffickers have appropriated one figure of the religion that is now called La Santa Muerte. And on the other side, narco-Pentecostalism and Pentecostalism in itself looks like, appears to really erase, to make tabula rasa of the existing religious beliefs. Even in Africa, that is the situation. Where in countries where Pentecostalism is really high, people tend to just erase all the local African beliefs. So I cannot help but do that parallel and ask myself how now Pentecostalism and or evangelical narcos is the representation of the Christian denomination. This is my first question. And I also wonder what is the link between that narco-Pentecostalism with the theology of liberation that was born in Latin America. I would like to know if there is a link between the two. And my last question, but I think you answered it, but I'm not sure, is about secularism. Because you said that in Brazil, the liberty of faith is a constitutional right. But does that mean that the state is secular? In French, the word is laïcité. So it's a laic state.
Anyone?
Yeah. I think it's a good question. I also wanted to know what the role of organized religion or more traditional forms of religion is in this context. And I'm thinking specifically of the Catholic Church as well, because I know the Catholic Church is quite strong in Brazil. But I also wonder about there's a very specific history between religion, organized religion on the one hand, and politics on the other hand in Latin America in the 1980s with the rise of the theology of liberation. And you had like a lot of people, like the Catholic theologian Leonardo Boff, who coined this idea of structural sin as a parallel to like structural injustice that he found in the secular context. But at the same time, the Vatican also pushed back against people like that. So I wonder if, I know it's probably technically outside of the scope of the research, so I'm happy if you don't have much to say about that. But I wonder about all of that. If the Catholic Church maybe has now less influence, probably because of that, less emphasis on getting involved politically, where they are now in this picture with Pentecostalism on the rise. And then also Pentecostalism, I think Kwasi asked the question, outside of those Pentecostal churches run by drug lords, like, Hillsong or these other more traditional that are there to win souls for the Lord and I think sell drugs. Where do they feature? I wonder if there's anything to say about them.
Okay.
But I can also just say your English is better than my Portuguese.
Good. Yeah, pode perguntar. Vai falando, eu vou para você.
Sorry. Thank you so much for question. And I died. Mas, um aspecto importante para para que possamos pensar também os contextos das igrejas pentecostais, contextos nacionais das igrejas pentecostais, é também entender o seu ponto, talvez, de origem, não apenas, enfim, pensar seus aspectos teológicos, doutrinários. Quando falo ponto de origem, também os contextos nacionais de suas origens. Muitas igrejas brasileiras fazem esse trânsito, essa inserção em países de África, né? Várias denominações.
She's saying that the most proeminent Pentecostal Brazilian churches, they have their branches in the African continent.
Então, podemos pensar que pensar em contextos, situações e adequações, né? As condições de cada um, a cada um desses contextos que essas igrejas, e aí há uma gramática, né? Que passa pelos aspectos teológicos e doutrinários, mas que se aproxima, mas também se diferencia. O que a chamada batalha espiritual, né, o que se demoniza em cada um desses contextos vai variar. Tá? Ainda que possamos pensar que talvez as condições da desigualdade sejam muito... Pensando a população, né, a população alvo dessa, né, que essas igrejas têm como nas suas, na sua... Para falar de proselitismo.
Okay, Vânia is saying that these churches, their usual target are poor populations, poor. The general frame is like poor people. However, she's saying that when you track their paths, you reach their adaptation to local contexts. And in each context, if you observe what is the evil, what is being fought, you realize that despite an overall understanding that we have inequality anywhere, inequality is the same anywhere. When these churches travel, they find enemies, local enemies. And that's why maybe you have the Islam as an enemy in some context, or Catholicism as an enemy in another context, or Afro-religions in another context. In the context of favelas, the main nemesis are the Afro-religions. So in that sense. Do you want to make a comment on it, Inga?
No, that's a question.
Okay, go. So, but she's still answering. Okay.
Catolicismo, né?
Yeah.
Outro ponto que foi tocado. Relação, vamos pensar aí, mas o Brasil ainda temos dados do último censo, né, que indica que o Brasil ainda é um país de uma grande expressão católica, né?
E sobre a teologia da libertação.
Estou falando. Então, podemos pensar que, se voltarmos para os anos 70, 80, olhamos para uma atuação dentro da Igreja Católica, né, segmentos da Igreja Católica, da teologia, das comunidades eclesiais de base, que tinham as suas ações estavam relacionadas também com ações, com pautas, agendas de movimentos sociais. Movimentos, mas Marcelo pode falar com muito mais propriedade, né? A questão da terra, a questão da habitação, enfim, e vários aspectos né, que envolvem as condições de vida dessa população empobrecida. Entretanto, também é nos anos 90 que vemos no Brasil a ampliação, não propriamente surgimento, mas uma expressão dentro da Igreja Católica que são as comunidades carismáticas, com ênfase muito mais na dimensão espiritual, mas com uma gramática e um repertório pautado na experiência espiritual, né, como aquela capaz também de mover, né, o sentido, né, dessa experiência espiritual mais individual, também a mudar a vida daquele fiel católico, e não a transformação social. Não vou conseguir responder né, com todos os elementos a questão que ele trouxe da ação do Vaticano, mas exatamente como que esse movimento carismático, especialmente no Brasil e em outros países também da América, né, olhando a América Latina, mas o Brasil ainda é uma expressão, né, do catolicismo na América Latina muito significativa, reconfigura também essas relações. E aí tem aspectos teológicos e doutrinários. Tá. Vamos lá, mas acho que eu trouxe alguns elementos.
Vânia is trying to answer more than one question, but she was saying that the liberation theology was very important in Brazil up to the 90s. Right now, the last census, the national census, says that the majority of the Brazilian population is Catholic. However, what she's pointing out is that there was a shift within the Catholic Church from this commitment against the military dictatorship, struggles for housing, for land, and the shift went towards the charismatic movement, which is, quite similar to what happens in the Neo-Pentecostal Church. It's much more about the spiritual experience and this elevation, this individual elevation towards progress, towards conquest. So, and that's why also the Vatican has condemned liberation theology, Leonardo Boffi, and so on, but it's supporting this new performance and this new face of the Catholic Church in Brazil. And maybe that's why up to now, the Brazilian population is mostly Catholic, but it's a different kind of Catholicism. Mais alguma que você quer responder? Teve essa pergunta sobre o que se é uma tradição africana, indígena, ou se as religiões africanas são baseadas na Bíblia. E também tem essa pergunta como que os traficantes se sustentam como pentecostais.
Ok. Os traficantes pentecostais, né, eles não têm eles têm uma proximidade com digamos, com a ideia da igreja, mas eles não são praticantes de frequência, pode não ser, não tem pesquisa com tráfico, né? Mas o que temos é como esses elementos do pentecostalismo se fazem presente hoje nos lugares que eles ocupam, o ponto do tráfico de droga, aqui, acho que é importante falar que isso é um ponto, ali o banquinho, ó, que centro vigia do tráfico.
This bench on the corner is where a watcher sits. That's where they sell drugs, So if anyone approaches this, and it's a signpost. You have this, it's like this. Yeah.
O escrito, senhor.
Yeah, Lord is my pastor. What? Yeah. And you guys, do you know the translation in English? And nothing will. I don't know. It's. Qual é o versículo de Paulo?
Você é meu pastor e nada me faltará.
Yeah.
Alguém? Então, é um processo de identificação, identidade com essas igrejas.
What Vânia says is important. She says that she has absolutely no condition of doing research with the drug cartels and the drug lords and the drug dealers. So her perspective is a perspective from the residents, from those who attend the church. So she does research going to different churches. These small churches she showed us here, but she doesn't know exactly how they practice their faith. The fact is, they don't go to the churches. They don't go to the temples. Not so often. Not all of them. Okay. So there is a kind of a very instrumental use of this faith.
Ok, eles recebem orações em contexto de evangelismo da igreja a igreja, o pastor, alguns membros da igreja saem pelas favelas, saem pelas ruas, e aí muitas vezes eles colocam as armas no chão, quando tem armas, e recebem a oração
Okay, yeah.
de libertação.
Yeah, she's saying that the pastors they walk the streets of the favelas or urban settlements, and the drug dealers they put their guns and their machine guns on the floor, and they receive, you know, the blessings. Yeah, that's how. Yeah. That's how the church goes towards them, because they don't go to the church. So yeah, that's it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So and yeah, Minga, you have a question.
Not these here, but pretty much trauma is
Trauma.
is a story of Brazil is a little bit similar to the South African experiences, where you have centuries of slavery that actually shape people's behavior. So could you please a bit elaborate a little bit more on the traumatic experiences, because why these people are engaging into such activities? Maybe your work is not about trauma, but maybe you could, I don't know if you have something that you can connect between trauma, behavior, and vulnerability of the people that are being targeted by the state.
Quer responder? Tem a pergunta do Kwesi também sobre o que é a Afro-Religion.
Isso. Para contextualizar, né, falamos em Afro-Religions, né, como uma categoria mais ampla de algumas práticas no Brasil.
Afro-Brazilian religion is like an umbrella term. There are also different.
Ok? A Umbanda.
Yeah. She's naming some. Umbanda,
Candomblé.
Candomblé.
Oi? É outro segmento, outra modalidade do Candomblé. Ok?
So there is a segmentation within what we call Afro-Brazilian religion.
E mesmo no Candomblé há uma diversidade.
And within each of these
de origem.
branches, there are other, you know, it's like.
Com referências à África, né?
But all of them, they come back to Africa, to the continent.
Yeah. Oh? Não, país, né? Porque Candomblé é de Angola.
Yeah. So and which means that when this connection is made, the memory of slavery is activated.
Ok. As práticas, a Umbanda tem também alguns elementos de povos indígenas, né?
So within Umbanda, for instance, there is also references to indigenous, but you know, like from South America, indigenous South America. Before it was South America, we say Abiyala, when it wasn't South America, when it was Abiyala. So there are references to also these indigenous entities, no? Like spiritual beings.
Ok. E também alguns elementos do espiritismo, né? O espiritismo na Umbanda. O que faz com que a gente tenha uma complexidade para entender essas práticas, mas importante que a Umbanda é uma religião, né, que surgiu nos anos 30 no Brasil, né, no Rio de Janeiro, e igualmente é uma religião que hoje é uma religião também que, na sua composição, quando falamos de religião no Brasil, temos também que entender que não são apenas os praticantes negros como uma categoria mais, né, mais ampla, pretos, né, e pardos que compõem essas religiões. Igualmente, a Umbanda também tem a sua participação a pessoas de, né, diferentes.
Vânia is saying that some of these religions they were built, institutionally built in the beginning of the 20th century, which means that they are also not traditional or original, you know. And she was adding another layer of complexity. The practitioners of Afro-Brazilian religions can also be white Brazilians. So yeah, so there are, yeah, and trauma behavior.
Okay. Eu tenho direcionado, né, esse interesse de pesquisa a pensar as condições de vida da população em periferia, mas especialmente, como disse, a religião, como essa religião orienta também esses comportamentos, né, e esses valores. E pensar o cotidiano dessa população. E falamos nesse contexto em um cotidiano marcadamente inseguro. Então, pensar trauma é pensar no mobilizo, né, essa dimensão do trauma, talvez não nos termos da incidência, né, e o quanto que esse trauma ele pode alterar, né, esse cotidiano. Mas podemos pensar, tal como a Viana Dais, na ideia dos eventos, né? Dos eventos traumáticos. O que significa, como o Antonário já no início trouxe para a gente aqui, né? Como um posicionamento, né? Também de solidariedade a todo sofrimento, que eu acho que essa dimensão que me interessa, como a Viana Dais, ao sofrimento que essa população vive cotidianamente, seja em relação aos contextos de violência, seja de tráfico, seja do Estado.
Yeah. Vânia is saying that though she doesn't mobilize, she doesn't dialogue with the literature on trauma, she has spent her whole academic life trying to understand the insecure daily life in these areas. And she says that they are absolutely vulnerable people who live in these areas, and there is suffering everywhere you look at, and that's why she has paid attention to religion, exactly to understand which values are in play and what are the hopes also, and the relation people establish with other similar events, like what happened last week in Brazil, and your capacity to generate solidarity towards what's happening around you. Yeah. Thank you very much.